The Artificial Pancreas Project. I would like to introduce Howard Zisser, a gentleman who I've had the opportunity to know now for a number of years. Dr. Zisser is the adjunct professor in the Department of Chemical Engineering at the University of Santa Barbara. More importantly, in terms of JDRF, he's the director of clinical research at the Sansom Institute, which is one of the linchpin sites for the Artificial Pancreas Consortium and the Artificial Pancreas Project. I am really excited about the work they're doing at the Sansom Institute. I'm really excited to have Howard and his capabilities deployed on this problem, and I'd like to welcome him to the stage.
Thank you, Jeffrey. What I'm going to try to do in just a couple of minutes is try to summarize some of the work that we've been working on for the last 4 or 5 years. Emily said I could take 3.5 minutes. I might take 4 minutes really to summarize what we're doing and what the concept is behind the artificial pancreas. I'd also first like to thank Jeffrey in particular and JDRF in general, for without their generous support, none of this field of research would be even accomplished at all. JDRF has really started this whole project. They've been very supportive, very helpful getting these processes approved through the FDA and the regulatory process, which has been very difficult. So without his support, JDRF support, and all of your support, none of this research would be possible. So if I can have the first slide. So I think many of you in this room kind of know the story of diabetes, and we're trying to stay on this middle path. We don't want to go too high or we get into some long-term complications and some short-term issues. And we don't want to have hypoglycemia. So we're trying to stay on this middle road. And if we don't, there are dire consequences. This is one of our graduate students. He graduated last year. He has a PhD in chemical engineering. And this is a tracing of his glucose throughout the day. And if you notice, it's completely normal, doesn't fluctuate. There's a graduate student, so there's beer and pretzels and all kinds of things in there. But this is a gentleman who doesn't have type 1 diabetes. So he has a young pancreas, it responds appropriately, and does a great job. He currently is working with Animus, and he'll be working on the artificial pancreas in the first development out of Animus. Unfortunately, this is how we see patients. This is a patient who came to see us for the first time, and you can tell that within very short periods she has very high and low swings in her blood sugars. Very difficult to live with. The next slide will show one of our patients that does have type 1 diabetes, and he's not on the artificial pancreas, and he's able to normalize his glucose. But it takes a lot of work. If you look at the details here, he's checking his blood sugar 20, 22 times a day. And overnight, when he's sleeping, there's nothing checking his blood sugar. So this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to automate this process. So this is another one of our patients. This is one of the first patients we had on the Dexcom continuous glucose sensor. And it's kind of a complicated slide, but I'm in stereo here, so I'll try to talk to both sides here. But what happened on the first couple of days, he was wearing a sensor, but we didn't let him see the sensor information. And on the third day, we actually unblinded it so he could see what was happening in real time with his glucose. And we gave him a couple of very general guidelines to go by. And you can see by the end of the week, it's not perfect, but he's in this zone that we like to see people in. And this is when Aaron Kowalski showed up on my door after that slide and said, why can't we use some of this new technology and put it together and automate the control of insulin? So these are some of the new devices that we've tested. This is Medtronic's sensor and pump and Dexcom's sensor. And these devices will track glucose every 5 minutes around the clock. This is one of the initial insulin pumps. It was called the Blue Brick. Fortunately, the Blue Brick is not around anymore, and we have a lot of cutting-edge technology to deliver insulin. And what we're trying to do is we have the sensors and we have the pumps. And we have the next slide. But the missing piece is really the brain, is how to connect this technology. So currently you could have a sensor that's telling you what's happening with your glucose around the clock, and you can have a pump that's delivering insulin, but they're not talking to each other. So we've worked with chemical engineers and process control engineers to try to get these two devices to automate control so the patients won't have to. So about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, we started working with JDRF, and in order to conduct these trials, we had to make tools because the tools didn't exist at the time. And we went to industry partners and said, we would like to hook up these devices together, and then we'd like to put a laptop to communicate between them so they can communicate, and we can drop different control designs that the engineers come up with and bring patients in and automate their control. So this is what we've done, and we've got cooperation from, I think, 4 or 5 different pump companies, 2 to 3 different sensor companies. And we've built this platform, and this platform is currently being used in about 12 to 14 places around the world to conduct these trials. So this is some of the press that we got. So we're fortunate in that JDRF's help in Washington has been pivotal to get these trials underway. It was frustrating when we built the design controls, we built the system, and yet FDA would not let us do it. So it took a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort to get this through. But now we're getting a lot of proposals approved through FDA. And this was about 3 weeks ago. This is the first patient in a multinational study. It's going to be a pivotal study of its kind. It will be about 60 patients, half adults, half adolescents. And the idea is not really to have perfect control, but really to get rid of the highs and get rid of the lows. So this study is underway, and it should be done hopefully by the next time we have a gala. So what I think the promise of the artificial pancreas is really to not promise perfect control all the time, but really to minimize the risk of hyperglycemia, hypoglycemia, so if you fall off that middle path, the dangers won't be nearly as high. It's a huge undertaking. We collaborate with about 8 to 10 clinical centers around the world, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of money. But we're slowly putting the pieces together, and we expect to have a lot more research to report back to you guys next year. Thank you very much.